All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Super excited to be here for a project management cost reduction webinar. I'm going to let some people join in. I know we always, when we get started, we have a crowd here that joins in a few minutes after. Good morning, Charlotte. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Good morning, Joanna. Good morning, everyone who joined the call.
Yeah, we've got some people joining. I always like to give it a few minutes. Let's see. I know how many people registered, so we'll wait for a couple minutes here, and then we'll get started. Let me pull up my presentation. I should say Charlotte's presentation. I will be helping out a little bit, but she will be leading most of it. So let me pull this up, share my screen. All right. Okay, so we will get started. And for those of you who joined late, this is being recorded, so you can always go back. And if you want to use this webinar to share with your team, with any of your colleagues, you can do that. We will be sending it out to everyone who participated and or registered, or who would like to see the recording. So hi, my name is Joanna Mirov, and I'm the CEO of MXOtech. And with me today, I have Charlotte Hebert, who is our Director of Application Development. We're going to be talking about how to achieve your technology business goals without wasting a lot of money. I thought this was important. We always do a lot of educational webinars, and I really love this one because what we find, and I've had my own experience when I've done projects internally and I had a budget in mind, but it wasn't managed properly, and it ended up doubling or even tripling, and then of course causing delays. And since we have matured as a company and added project management into our organization, I've personally witnessed and seen what that has done for ourselves and for all of our clients. So today, some of the strategies we're going to talk about, they're not just for enterprise level customers, but they're also for our SMB clients, right? And I think that's really important, because it used to be that only large enterprise level corporations had the money and the resources to do large projects, hire project managers. And today, every organization relies on applications. You know, I think everyone who's on this call today could probably agree with me that they have a lot of different applications. And without them, like your ERP systems, your CRMs, your accounting applications, you really couldn't run your business. So it's really important. And I also find that a lot of our clients have too many applications, or they're not talking to one another. And we've had those requests coming in, and we thought, you know what, let's do this webinar today on helping people find a way to create that efficiency, put those goals in place, and streamline them in a way where they're not wasting money. For those of you who don't know who we are, MXOtech, we're an IT managed service provider, and we also have our application development division. We've been in business for 17 years now. We have a little over 40 employees, and we work with our customers looking at the holistic picture, right? Everything from providing help desk support to security, to helping them with developing applications, doing system integrations, or simply just project management, right? Like sort of a fractional project manager, PMO office. All right, so what are we going to be covering today? We're going to talk about why project management matters, and then selecting the best framework for your particular project, right? Because there's a lot of different options. What you need to have in place to be successful. Your client, we're going to talk about client and staff retention. And that sounds a little weird, like what does that have to do with project management? But what we find is when, you know, things are organized, you can have a lot, and you have the right tools in place, your clients and your staff are much happier. Risk management, which is really important. and then easy to understand project management solution. When we say easy, we really wanted to make sure that we made this easy to understand, but also easy to implement. Now, at the end, we'll show you, we can help you with some of this, but we also wanted to go through this with you so that you can do this on your own with your existing team, right? Because some of you already have a person on staff that has great project management skills, and it's just a matter of giving them the right tools so they can be successful. So I'm going to let Charlotte introduce herself to all of you, because she's going to be kicking this off. But I just wanted to for those of you who know, Charlotte was your client experience manager, and then she's moved into our application development department and recently was promoted into our director of application development. And the reason I asked Charlotte to do this, because I've seen her successfully manage projects from start to finish and get some really nice feedback from our clients. So I wanted you to hear it firsthand from Charlotte. So Charlotte, please take it away.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you for having me participate in this webinar and co-host. As you know, project management is a huge passion of mine. It's something that I've been doing for about 10 years now. And for those of you on the call who know me, it's so nice to see your emails again and be able to spend this time with you. I'm very happy in my new role as Director of Application Development and excited to show you new ways that you can serve your customer base.
Cool, thank you. And by the way, if anyone has any questions or comments, you can feel free to put them in the chat. I will be looking at the chat and I can address those during and or after. So, all right, next slide. Let's see, hold on one second. I'm navigating here today. Here we go.
So you might be asking yourself, why do you need project management? Why can't you just give someone the work and expect that it's going to get done? Well, it turns out that most of the time that doesn't happen the way that we want it to. And in fact, organizations that invest in project management practices waste 28 times less money than those who don't. Can you imagine anything that you can save 28 times that value? 70% of projects fail without project management. And failure can mean a lot of different things. It can mean not meeting your timelines. It can mean going over budget. It can mean having to pull in resources that were otherwise dedicated to something else. How do you prevent that? How do you prevent 10 cents on every dollar being wasted by not having the right people in charge to help align your business processes? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to achieve your business goals and increase your portfolio of completed work and gain more. And the thing is that 42% of companies are aware of project management practices, but they aren't conducting them. And that includes small and mid-sized businesses and the big guys, which we'll talk about in the next few slides. So you might be asking yourself too, well, is it really something that I'm only thinking about during business, or maybe I can kind of carve that out as part of my life? This doesn't really apply to me. It turns out it's something that we do every day anyway. I know for most of us, or at least we try, when we go to the grocery store, we have a strategy, right? We're going down the specific aisles. We know what we need. Hopefully we have the to-do list. Hopefully we have that budget in mind. That's a form of project management. Or getting your family ready for a holiday party, preparing the right treats, picking out the costumes, another form. Even managing your day-to-day to-do list. If you're not managing that, who is? Who's getting these things done unless you're tasking out your backlog of items to complete that day? For those of you who know me on this call, know that I have a 5-year-old son who, yes, he's already 5 years old, and this is the year he's going into kindergarten. And it is a big project management endeavor to try to make sure that he's hitting all his medical appointments, getting all the documentation that he needs, and really just keeping him education-wise on track. Or even on a more personal note, as if that wasn't already, I think most of us on the call have experienced getting our houses ready for the in-laws to come over, even as far as, getting those cocktails on hand. In fact, I use these practices not because it's business related, but in my everyday life because I find them to be so successful. So this board here in the bottom right is my home Scrum board, if you can believe it. And it feeds back to the origin of Agile Scrum, where sometimes it's something that anyone can do. It's just a power of having a Post-it note that you can move from needs to do, in progress, done. That can really make the difference for your business to say, look at these are the things that we have blocked and these are the things that we need to do. It does anyway for my household. So it's more than just your job. You're planning your career, you're planning for your retirement, and at the end of the day, you're project managing your life. So why not apply that to your business? The top reasons to use project management is, why we're all here, to stay on track and to save money. And that can mean different things. But at the end of the day, it's strategic alignment and clarity that really does make that difference for you. And employing customer and employee satisfaction goes hand in hand, because how are your customers going to feel satisfied if they don't know the status, they don't know what's going on, they don't know when the targets are going to be achieved, and they're kind of in the dark? Or the same is true for your employees. If they have the tools they need and they know what they need to get done, or even better, if they're assigning the things that they need to get done to themselves, that increases the accountability, that increases their level of involvement, and that increases their level of satisfaction to say, look at what I was able to accomplish. Risk management is another one, a terminology that I think we've all heard of before. And it's one of the core foundations of these practices that we're going to teach you how to use in your businesses, because it's more than just avoiding risk. It's also interacting with that risk, tackling it, making sure it doesn't happen. And when it does happen, creating the lessons learned to make sure that your business processes are that much more improved because you manage something the way that you did. And that transitions well into how you service your customer base. And in my mind, one of the most important things, or at least from our experience, one of the most important things is to eliminate team silos. We'll talk about that a little bit more later, but essentially it means when you have something in mind that you want to change, and I'm going to use technology as an example as we proceed with this presentation, and say, you're trying to implement a new application, and maybe the accounting team interacts with it completely different from the way that your team on the floor does. How do you get those two groups together to say, these are my needs, these are what I need to be successful, these are the things that make me efficient? That all goes under the umbrella of how you're saving money and time and staying on track. So let's talk a little bit more about saving money. If you can picture this, every 10 seconds, I'm sure many have gone by since we started this webinar, $1 million is wasted by companies worldwide as the result of ineffective implementation of business strategy. $1 million every 10 seconds. This results in $2 trillion a year lost. And you might be thinking, I don't know if this necessarily applies to me, small and mid-sized businesses, but it does. It's including all of those businesses. And inadequate project planning is the number one reason for project failure. It's the same reason that employees often leave their jobs. There's no one managing it. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, I'm a small mid-sized business, but clearly some of these huge global multinational brands must have it together. They must know what they're doing. And I know at least at MXO, we hold ourselves to that world-class standard because we're always trying to achieve the best that we can do. But sometimes these companies even fail. And Coca-Cola was a good example of that. They wasted $4 million in development and another $3 million in backstocked products after releasing a new Coke due to poor project management. So if Coca-Cola needed to fail and fall down to get it right before they realized that they needed to enable these processes, why wouldn't you in your business? So let's get started with picking the right framework for the right project. Now, most of you have probably heard of the better known and older methodology of waterfall/predictive. This is something that is a commonplace term and is often thought of first when talking about project management. However, it comes down to the approach and the type of project that you're working on. So it might not always be the right framework for you. And using this table of skills, it can help you decide what would work best for what business goal you're trying to achieve. So I'm going to use two very commonplace examples as we go through this. A little bit more time on this slide, but I think it's helpful for you to understand. So from the waterfall predictive model, picture you're building a house. You have that blueprint in front of you. You know everything that you need to make for it. You have all the materials laid out in hand, and any change is going to be costly. That's a term for predictive because you have everything that you need up front. You have all the work built out, and really the customer's expecting to talk to you at the beginning of the conversation, and then you're going to present them with the ending result. However, in many businesses, that's not necessarily how it goes. I know in the technology industry and from companies that I've worked from before that did application development with this strategy, it didn't always turn out so well because sometimes what you think you want in the beginning isn't exactly what you wanted at the end. So that's when we started to enable the Scrum and Agile methodology. It's an approach that works well for technology because oftentimes customers will come to us and say, I have this idea of what I want, but I'm really not sure about all the components that I need. I'm really not sure what the requirements are, who's going to be doing what, and who's involved. That's the opportunity to say, we need to talk to you more frequently. We need to figure out your scope. We need to create a prototype and design for you so that we understand all of those requirements. And the development of that is often iterative, meaning it's kind of like, I don't know, if you're downloading an image in the 90s and you're starting to slowly see the Mona Lisa appear, that's what we're doing with you. And the reason for that is because you need to check in along the way and make sure that everything that your customer wants meets their satisfaction. I think some of our customers on this call who've interacted with design and customer facing work and projects have experienced this in the past. Please feel free to add an example to the chat, but it means that you're frequently delivering rather than that big bang at the end. It means that you're testing with them on a regular basis rather than at each separate phase and milestone, which can be a benefit, but sometimes it's not because you're having to interact with separate teams all the time who may not be talking to each other, rather as instead of that holistic perspective. But that's not to say that predictive's a bad thing in any way. It just depends on what you need, and that means selecting the right framework. If anyone has any questions about these methodologies, please feel free to add them to the chat. More than happy to help.
I will say that our chat is not working, so you can put them in the Q&A. Thank you, Vitaly, for pointing that out.
Thank you, Vice.
It's okay. We just want to keep going. You can always put it in the Q&A. All right.
Number 2 reason is strategic alignment. It's very important to provide the right framework for decision making and what's important to the organization. It's something that we talked about before. So in the previous slide, choosing the right framework and the right methodology and having someone to come forward and choose that decision maker and make sure that everyone's on the same page as that subject matter expert, sometimes it's called, as that product owner, sometimes it's called, but really as that leader to make the right decisions so that you're constantly moving forward and not getting stuck at roadblocks just because so-and-so isn't responding. At the end of the day, that strategic alignment allows you to grow your business and grow your portfolio and make yourself more marketable to your customer base because they can see the outcomes of what you set your heart on. Important thing that I love the slide because I think it's something that regardless of what type of project you're doing, even if it's the predictive blueprint waterfall methodology, or if it's the Scrum Agile iterative, I kind of will get it as I go along from the customer perspective. You're always going to need to start with design, and that helps you to determine the requirements. So that's something that you can enable in your own businesses. The chair example is a really good one because it's like this small cardboard chair that you're deciding how the legs are going to go. You're deciding maybe the weight limit of the user. But at the end of the day, what you're doing by creating that design is you're reducing the risk that the customer is not going to like what you hand to them at the end of your project. You're collaborating with them and building that strong relationship so that you can understand their needs, their inner workings, and hopefully provide a greater value to them than they've experienced before. It's very quality driven, it's very test driven, and it's scalable. Sometimes our prototypes look like just adding a few additional columns to a program. And some of our prototypes, again, from the application development perspective, look like a functional website that you can interact with, and the team decides whether or not they like a file push notification. It really depends on what you're doing, but I highly recommend leading with design to keep everyone on track and keep them happy with the outcome. Improving employee and customer satisfaction, we talked about it a little bit more earlier, and I experienced this notion a lot in my professional career, and I think everyone on this call can relate. When you're working on something and then you get that dreaded question of, so how's it going? Where are we? What are we doing? It kind of eliminates that aspect because you're trying to give people as much transparency as possible. It's one of the foundations to this core process, and something that I hope, using some of the tools that we'll talk about during this discussion, is something that you can continue to provide, because having folks feel like they're not in the dark can make all the difference. And not just to your customer base, it can be the same for your team. At MXOtech, our application development team is in sync with one another and often schedules a time and place for Q&A. For our work, we meet daily every morning for 15 minutes to talk about any blockers and status to keep sure that we're on track. It's the number one reason that people leave their jobs, is by not feeling like they have the right management system, not feeling like their methodology of working is what's the best possible thing for them. And this allows not only the transparency for your customer to say, actually, I don't need to hear about this weekly, you can connect with me monthly. Or maybe the customer is like, I need a link to see what's going on at any time, because I could have a board meeting in a second and I need to be able to provide them with a status. Or maybe your employees thinking, I really don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have a task list at hand. They just gave this to me with a shovel and told me to climb a mountain. That's not the situation that you want people to be in, because it's not going to make them stick around, customers or employees. And using these methodologies has proven results. In our case specifically, we had a 0% turnover even during COVID. And a lot of that comes from the connectedness that we have with each other, staying in sync and offering that helping hand. It aligns with our core values, but it's definitely something that we practice.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Charlotte. And I think the most frustrating thing for employees is just being stuck, right? Not having that cadence in place to keep moving, not being able to collaborate, waiting for people to respond, right? And you start to lose momentum. I think we've all been there, right? Because no one else seems interested. Well, why am I going to bother? I'll move on to something else. And then there it goes. Your project goes to the wayside. So I think those are all excellent points. Thanks, Charlotte.
Yeah, I even have very frequent examples, even with some of the projects we work on, having those types of discussions can unearth things that maybe you didn't even know about employees, like um, previous project experience failures, and helping them create their own lessons learned to make sure that it's not prevented, it's not reoccurring, even if sometimes that means I just have a really hard time with this group of people because they failed me before. Then you can start asking why as part of these conversations. So foundations for improving satisfaction, I feel like we gave you a lot of content in that last slide. So I'm giving you just the highlights here. These are the core foundational practices of Agile and Scrum specifically. It's on scrum.org. And I know I'm a little bit biased because we do application development, but at the end of the day, these 5 items mean the world to your employees and to your customers. It's commitment, as Joanna said, to that project and what you're working on, and not feeling like no one cares about this, I'm not going to do it anymore. Having the courage to speak up and say, be that vulnerable person and say, you know what, I'm blocked. I don't know what to do about this server license. I need to ask the right person, and removing that holdup can make a huge difference, but it takes strength of your team and trust in one another to stand up and say, I'm having a problem. And the more that you develop those relationships, the more you're increasing that courage. And without that stress of having the, I don't know how this person's going to react, it increases the focus on the work at hand, and it increases the openness of your team, and it increases the respect for one another. And that respect transitions directly to your customers. It's like when you taste a excellent baked good and you can tell this is made with love. That's how you want your customers to feel about the work that you're giving them. You want them to be able to feel the passion of the team behind it. By keeping the customers involved and actively engaged throughout this development cycle, it's making them feel valued. And they are, absolutely they are. And that's something that you can enable with these 5 core things. Oh, one back. One more. Risk management is something that I said earlier, is a terminology that is not necessarily new to us, but it's something that is a core process for project management in general. It's taught as a core value to Scrum Masters, to PMPs, everyone involved, and it should be a constant consideration of whomever is leading your project. You should be asking them, like, how are we identifying projects before they occur? How do we have a project risk list? If you don't have a project risk list, you're already in trouble because you're not thinking about what could go wrong and how you can mitigate a disaster. We don't want to do disaster recovery. We want to do disaster prevention, right? So we're mitigating threats, we're maximizing the results, and those things help us ensure deadlines. And that doesn't mean hiding it when things go bad in any way. It doesn't mean if I didn't think about it up front, then I really don't even want to talk about it. Risk management means, hey, this happened. How do I prevent it? How do I learn from it? How do I make it better? So the next time we can do that much better as an organization. What it means is you're going to save your resources, your team members, your stakeholders, your customers with the time and energy of, this was a bug that we had no idea was going to happen and it's going to cost us 3 weeks. Maybe we need to think a little bit more about risk management in that process. So project managers, as that leader and as that responsible person overseeing the team, their goal responsibilities, and again, this is helping you to ensure that if you do have team members who are already acting in this role, that they're taking the right steps. So they should be empowering the teams. And oftentimes that means encouraging them to assign themselves their own work. I know my Scrum board, cork board, bulletin sticky note thing is that much more powerful because I'm the person writing it. I'm the person committing to the hours that it's going to take, and I'm the person committing to that deadline. and empowering them to make those decisions can make all the difference. It includes budget estimates, is such a such a big part of everything. I think a lot of this is negotiation. You're having to tell your customers, what is the realistic timeline? What is the realistic capabilities of your team? Project managers should not be saying, this is going to take 2 weeks when it really is going to take 4. Measuring and monitoring metrics, identifying what needs to be monitored, identifying how it's working, and if it's not working, what needs to be changed. Process development for the presentation, and always ensuring that that backlog of items, or that to-do list, if you will, is up to date and being crossed off, because we don't want to go backwards. We don't want to say, did we get this done or is it still blocked? We want to know, and we want to have that continuous oversight, because the high rate of failure occurs when there's not someone responsible on your team for that level of risk management.
Well, I think the budget is such a great point, even for personal, right? You sort of need to communicate with your significant other about that budget. And I love the sticky note too, because it's giving me a lot of ideas, and for your kids, because let me tell you, my kids think that I have an unlimited budget. Everything is only $30, mom, times 10. So I think it's a great idea for your personal budget and professional budget. I think we all know about a professional budget, but we sometimes forget to think about the personal budget, which, can skew up very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of self-help, I think, involved in project management. So eliminating silos, I really love this graphic because it's often representative of how we work, especially in this new world of often remote environments. How often are people really talking to each other? How often are they really communicating? Do you really know how your entire department feels about the implementation of this application? Do you? We need to have that leadership come in place. We need to align these different teams so that we can obtain their feedback, because it's the critical success factor in determining the clear requirements of any work that you're doing. This can be internal or it can be from a customer perspective. Sometimes the highest person, I think this is something that we've all experienced when we're talking with customers. We may be working with a member of the executive team who's less hands-on, but to really know what the person needs, sometimes we have to talk to other team members and do those user interviews and determine what work really needs to be done so that everything in the outcome side can be as much use as possible. One of our designers on the MXO team had a good story about this, where he was working for a university on user experience design and created this huge application. This was prior to MXOtech, on the calendar of the students and the location of the campus. And then he realized nobody was asking the students what they wanted. And it turns out they completely left off financial aid and resources about financial aid. And I know when I was in college, that was always on my mind. So yep, sorry, go back one more time. And also having that project management individual on your team allows the professionalism to quickly assess the situation and respond in a way that optimizes the outcome ethically. It's one of the core values for the PMP, the Project Management Institute, absolutely, as ethical practice, making sure that you're doing right by every member of whatever stakeholder team that you're on, and effectively applying that business knowledge in the best way possible. We're fortunate on our team to have a high level of technical staff and skill set that encompasses the global needs of technology, but that's not true for everyone. So eliminating silos is essential to the project management success. Okay, now you can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, Joanna. Okay. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I have someone on my team who's doing this, or maybe you're thinking, wow, I really need someone on my team to be doing this. And I've mentioned a couple of acronyms as we go along. Different certifications are listed here. These are the type of individuals that you would need to be looking for. But realistically, the cost tends to be a little high. And for small and mid-sized businesses, this isn't always in budget. And maybe you don't need someone for 2,000 hours a year. But the cost of not having someone on your team to do this, again, means you're losing about 10 cents on every dollar. And the cost of having someone to do this means you're saving 28 times whatever it was that you're going to be losing by not having them there. I'm getting a little in a loop. Did you want to add to this one, Joanna?
It's okay, you got it. I think everyone knows what Charlotte is talking about, right? But so there's a lot of cost savings all around because I think, from what you can see here, and it's not just savings of the actual project, but potentially losing customers or customer dissatisfaction, losing employees or employee dissatisfaction. When employees are dissatisfied, their performance is much lower. So I think, I see who's on the call, very intelligent people. You can probably relate to a lot of this. And again, even in your personal life, because you're not achieving the goals that you want, or maybe, like what happened, right? When a lot of people didn't do their project, COVID hit, pricing went up. So, it's just like when anything in life, create a goal and then execute on that, but have a process in the system to do that so that you can stay within those budgets. And I'll go to the next slide here, which is one of my favorite slides. Charlotte, maybe you could get started and I could add to it.
Yeah, so at MXOtech, we realized that a lot of our customers were coming to us with this need, and they may not have the budget to have someone on full time to help facilitate these projects. So there's this process in place, or this offering that we have from a consultancy perspective, to have a steering committee. And it's very much like a ship's captain. It's enabling these best business practices, these things that we've taught you how to use during this discussion, and leading those teams as an advisory board. Typically, the participants on that team from our experience, the customer side, would be the executives, the leaders of those silos, bringing them all to the table, determining what projects need to happen, when they need to happen, and really allowing them to work through the tangible tools, resources, budget, negotiate timelines, negotiate budget, all of the components that go into project management to add that business value.
And I think, what I like about this is people sometimes overcomplicate project management, and they think you need someone that is PMP certified Scrum Master. And yes, in some cases that's really required, especially when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar projects. But a lot of our projects for our SMB clients are easy enough that as long as they have that stakeholder, right? Plus maybe someone or a team behind them that has some of the technology expertise. We recommend really setting up a weekly cadence with a planning tool that brings all those stakeholders in one room. Sometimes I do have to say, it's nice to have a third disinterested party leading the team, right? And someone who does have some project management or even IT background. It could be for anything. We had a client that I'll show you, they had a lot of disparate systems that they needed to bring together, but everyone was busy and they couldn't get anyone to sort of be the lead to move that forward. And what we were able to do is come into their organization, look at all of their technologies that they had in place, what they needed to keep, what they needed to integrate, and what they needed to eliminate, and dealing with vendors and different things like that. And I'll show you, you can use any project management tool, but for us, we use something very simple called the Tom's Planner. I think Tom's Planner is it's less than $100 a year, but it's an easy way to have a project charter, like you see on the left here, is to put all those projects in one place, assign resources to them here on the right? What's the status? And then have that person on your weekly meeting drive those to-dos into a progress of completion, right? And understand what's important, what's not, and who's responsible. You can use any tool. A lot of you already have project management tools within your platform. So to us, whether you use Tom's Planner, whether you use Microsoft or something that you have within your organization, it doesn't matter. The key component here is to have an individual that's responsible, also has access to technical expertise. They don't have to be technical. They can utilize someone like us, and then drive successful execution and delivery on those projects, right? So we'll go over here. The client I mentioned here is the Place for Children with Autism. Allison was the CEO. She came into this startup, and they had a lot of different applications, right? And it was really difficult for the employees to figure out, what do we use for what? And then they're spending money on applications that they might not even need anymore. And so we presented them with our IT steering committee, which again, if some of you want to do this yourselves, you can absolutely do that. We have that process written out, but we came in to help them. And within just a few months, we were able to really take all of those initiatives, put some clarity around them, right? Execute on the things that needed to be executed, work with their internal team, get everyone in one place. And you know what's really nice about it? I think once you get that going, you can then utilize those tools and processes going forward for all of your other projects, and you sort of make that a part of your organization, and everyone starts to learn it. And I think it's nice. It's almost like having a coach where someone comes in and teaches you how to leverage these tools, teaches you how to do all these things, so then you can be self-sufficient, right? Sort of like, do I give you the fish, or do I help to teach you how to fish so you can maintain that yourself? And then I'll let Charlotte talk a little bit about the next slide here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I love the terminology of coach. That's exactly what it is, Joanna. Thank you for bringing that forward. One of the things that we also wanted to talk to you about, and I know for those of you who've worked with us for some time, you understand just how important our core values are to us. Some companies will have them on the website and then they reference them, every quarterly meeting. But for us, we live and breathe by them. And they're what we know belovedly as waffles, because that's the acronym that they spell out to. So walk with a purpose, absolutely. With the project management processes, you're arriving prepared into every discussion that you're having, every skills-based scenario that you need to encounter, assuming the best intentions. So really listening to your team, listening to your clients, understanding their needs, and assuming that everyone wants that same positive outcome. Family spirit, we're staying connected and supportive, not just to our customers, but also to ourselves, to our internal teams. Because again, these practices are things that you can apply to your everyday life, to your workplace, with your coworkers, and especially with your customers. Let them feel your smile. Absolutely. We approach things with that positive outlook and developing relationships, because that is at the core of retaining your employees and your customers and building more. And finally, that sense of urgency is absolutely necessary for keeping things on time and on budget, and helping you to ask the right questions of, when is this going to be done? How many hours is it going to take? What's our next step? What's the roadblock? Who do you need me to talk to? What can I do to make you become indispensable to your customers?
Thanks, Charlotte. And thanks, Vitaly. He gave me the actual quote that I was trying to recite. Give a man a fish and feed him for a day. Don't teach a man to fish, and feed yourself. He's a grown man, and fishing is not that hard. Okay, sure. Sounds good.
I wanted to share one of my favorite quotes too that Joanna actually said about this was our waffles. It sounds like the breakfast food. So she had this sweet idea to send maple syrup to our customers and said, without you, we would be toast.
I don't know if that was me or Karen, somebody came up with that, but it's cool. And I appreciate that, Charlotte, you put the waffles into this presentation, and the reason why I think that's important, and I'm glad she did that, is because all of you have some kind of mission, vision, core values within your organization, and you should tie your processes and systems around those, right? It's not just a core value of we respect one another, right? What does that mean? Or I don't know, transparency. They're not just words you put up on a wall, right? If transparency is one of your core values, then you need to incorporate it into things like this, about being transparent, about understanding, and being open of telling everyone what are the projects within your organization, what is the status, right? That's what really, and transparency could mean a lot of things, but what's important is to incorporate that within your organization on a much deeper level. So thank you, Charlotte, for bringing that up. By the way, we have the Q&A open. I'm seeing comments coming in there, so feel free to put them in. I think our one of our last slides here. So I asked Sean, our CIO, and Charlotte of what we could do at the end for this session. If any, really, we wanted this to be educational, but if any of you are interested and feel like you could relate to some of this, right? You have some projects, small or big, within your organization, and it's just been frustrating. You've been wanting to get them done. They've been, on your mind or on your calendar for the last 6 to 12 months, and you just haven't gotten to them. We wanted to offer something like a consulting session that would be very inexpensive, for $695, where we'll come in, we'll give you Charlotte and any of our other designers to review your upcoming and in-flight technology initiatives, really kind of help you think through those organizational impacts of each project, review your plans, provide you with feedback, help you set up that project charter, right? Like if you decide to use Tom's plan or whatever you have, how do we get that set up? Then conduct a project planning and management session, bring in the stakeholders within your organization so that, we can do this with everyone. And then review the tools you're using and help you make those recommendations. 100% money guarantee. If you're not happy for any reason, we will give you a full refund. We really wanted this to be a helpful educational session. And if you wanted to get started at a low cost to kind of give you that boost to get going on that project and complete it once and for all, we're happy to do that. All right. Do we have any questions, comments, feedback? I think we're 10 minutes before the end of this session, so I'm happy to answer anything. Let's see. I'm going to look on here. And I think everybody's on the fishing thing. I've got a fishing isn't hard, but actually catching a fish is hard. Love that. Okay, so we have a question here. Charlotte, how did we choose Tom's Planner over other project management tools? I think that's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. It came out of our steering committee, and it came out of our experience with a steering committee, using it in practice with our customers. Essentially, at the end of the day, it's a pipeline. But the reason we like it is because you can make a shareable link that our enterprise level customers, because these practices that we're talking about, we use for small businesses and our big enterprise customers exactly the same way. Sometimes they want that transparency to see, where am I at? I need to share this at a meeting now. And we can even set it up so that there's a password enabled and keep it secure for their teams. It's highly configurable. Everything on there you can change, including the colors and icons. It's a great tool to the point where Joanna and I actually spent some time with Tom on a one-on-one level. Yeah.
And I would say the same thing. I think, for me, it's the simplicity of it. Because I think sometimes, like when I worked with Microsoft Project, which is fine too, it got to be really complicated. You have to start scrolling. I can't really see anything. That just didn't work. So, I have this quote, what is the best project management tool? The one you use, right? I don't think it even matters what you use as long as you're using it. I think people spend a lot of time, there's Monday.com as well. But I think people spend a lot of time on looking around, fishing around for project management tools. And then, then they end up not using anything. So pick the one that's simple, that relates to you, that's easy for you and your staff. And it depends too on your team. If you have a very experienced, mature group, they might be used to a certain type of platform. If you have a much younger environment and they've never used it, you might want to do a little session with them on what would resonate with them more. So it just kind of depends on your organization, I think, as well. I have another question. I think you went over some of this, but which is better? I think what she meant to say, not PMP or Agile, but Scrum or Agile. I'm not sure what PMP or Agile means, but.
I know what she means.
Okay.
The PMP, actually, there's a second component of that question. As a PMP holder myself, they started including Agile as part of their training for those of you who are like, I only really want to work with a PMP. Now they're doing both. And there's more to it than that. There's always a branch and an alternative of everything these days. There's like extreme programming, which is Agile. But anyway, besides the point, it really just depends on the project. Sometimes, as an example, at MXOtech, on our IT side of the house and on our pro ops team, they know that okay, I need to go on site and I need to have all this equipment and I need to have these specific products with me so that I can get it done within this time frame. It's simple, bing, bang, boom. I've got my blueprint. I'm good to go. I know what I need to do. I've got everything mapped out. These are the days I'm going. Great. That's perfect for waterfall. But if you need to figure out along the way what you need, if you need to communicate with people more, if there's more than just the beginning and the ending, but there's that conversation in between where you're connecting the dots, that's more of a situation where you should consider Scrum and Agile. Personally, with the technology standpoint, Agile is the way to go if you're going to build an application or migrate an application or redesign a component of something that you're working on from a software perspective. So I hope that answers your question, but it just really depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
That's great. And exactly, I agree. And what I love about it is just like I said, the cadence, the consistency, because I think people start to lose momentum. They get bored. They don't hear something for a while. They forget, right? I mean, think about it. We're so inundated today with requests, with responsibilities, with technology. I think everyone's kind of like walking around sometimes just ADD because there's so much information coming at us that you lose that momentum. So what I like about it is just the consistency, keeping that going. And then, having the reward also of seeing something making progress, right? Slowly but surely, and then seeing that success and the end result of something being completed. So I think that's really important. I have another question here. You mentioned leading with design. Are these wireframes?
Oh, such a good question. I love that question. So there's a couple different ways you can think about it. For MXO specifically, with applications, we use full functioning prototypes where it's going to mirror exactly what you're getting, including like being able to click on things and then seeing where it goes for the major functions. And that kind of helps you determine with your team, like, I need this to go here. This workflow should actually work this way. The logic component's a little bit off. that's what we do from a prototype perspective, versus a wireframe might be more of like a whiteboard kind of a site map, kind of that breakdown, more less interactive, more like visual images and kind of how they connect. Prototyping is a little bit more tangible, like that picture of the cardboard chair would be a prototype versus, yeah.
All right, and thank you for the comment. Agile allows to control quality of outcomes better on medium-sized projects. So thank you. Yeah, definitely. I like that word actually, control quality, right, of outcomes. That's a great way to summarize it. And that's what I like about it as well is, so thank you, Vitaly, for that. All right, well, let's see. I think we're close to the, oh, wait, hold on. I have one more question and then we're gonna wrap it up. I think we're here gonna be at the top of the hour. Aren't prototypes expensive?
It is. That's another really outstanding question. And I always get when we're having our consultative discovery calls, and it is vastly more expensive not to have one, because you don't know what you want or what needs to be there. We consider it an essential component to writing our requirements and building off of what it is that you need to have that representation of the outcome, because the cost of not having one means that down the road, you may need to make a change that's going to impact your budget, it's going to impact your timeline, and it's going to create bugs as a result because you just didn't think about it before. Because so many people these days, I mean, like Joanna said before, I feel like a part of us all suffer from ADD now because of the way the world works, but it's made us more visual too. There's a lot of visual learners and there's a lot of tangible, tactile people like myself who just kind of need to like go through something to really get it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a great response. And, you know, for me, like I just had a deck built on my house. And thank God I hired an architect myself and not just had the builder come in and build it, because even the one thing that they missed is they put some of the cement for one of the steps further out. And even that has had such a big impact that now they have to redo all my landscaping, raise the ground so that they could cover that big cement, or it has to get removed. Even that one mistake, right? With the architect is costing me a lot more money. Now I could only imagine if I didn't hire that architect to give me that drawing, that visual, that prototype, what would have happened, right? So I think it's key, and all of you are, I know all of us are very visual people, and unless you're like a programmer and you can, you know, or an architect, right? You want to see what you're going to get at the end of the day, how it works. Does it toggle this way? Does it toggle that way? What is it going to look like? Is it going to be user friendly? When we talk about design, it's not just about how pretty it looks. It's actually how it functions. How many clicks does it have? Is somebody going to, you know, when we're looking at it, it's like, why do you think Apple is so successful, right? The iPhone, a child can use it because they've thought about the UX UI design component of it. My 4-year-old uses my iPhone all the time. She knows how to navigate through because it's very easy. That's the goal of doing prototyping, right? And getting a great design in place so that your user community adopts it very easily and you have a much, much stronger adoption from your community. So I will leave it with that. Charlotte, thank you so much. I hope you guys really enjoyed this session. This was one of my favorites. Feel free to add any comments. If you thought this was helpful, you wasn't, if it wasn't, if there's anything that you want us to talk about next, any upcoming webinars, we do these for all of you. We hope to hear your feedback, and I really hope that everyone enjoyed it as much as I did. I know my next step, as silly as it sounds, is going to be to get that cork board, get those sticky notes, and actually have a visual of what I need to get done because I'm a little behind schedule. So thanks for that idea, Charlotte. I don't know if you want to make any final comments.
Just thank you everyone for attending. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend time with us and really dig into these processes. And it's always a pleasure to speak with all of you. And for those new folks in the crowd, we appreciate you coming to spend this time and get to know us.
All right, everyone, have a fantastic Thursday and enjoy your weekend starting tomorrow. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.